Have you ever felt like something was watching you, or heard whispers when you're all alone? These aren't just stories, they're real. In 2008, Sarah and her husband Mark moved into a charming Victorian home in upstate New York. The house had been on the market for years and they got it for a steal. But as they unpacked, Sarah felt a strange heaviness in the air. At first, she dismissed it as nerves, but then they discovered a locked attic door with no key. One night, Sarah was alone when she heard slow, deliberate footsteps above her. Mark was working late and there were no neighbors nearby. Grabbing a flashlight, she climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. The door, which had always been locked, was now slightly ajar. Inside, she found a dusty rocking chair facing the corner of the room. On the chair lay a tattered doll with hollow, staring eyes. As she stepped closer, the chair began to rock on its own. A cold breeze rushed past her, though the window was sealed shut. From that night on, they heard whispers in the attic. Sometimes it was Sarah's name, spoken in a voice that sounded eerily like her late grandmother. Mark grew increasingly irritable, blaming Sarah for imagining things. But one night, he saw it too. A shadowy figure crouched at the foot of their bed, disappearing as soon as they turned on the lights. The breaking point came when Sarah woke up to find the doll from the attic lying on her chest. Its head was turned toward her, its glass eyes unblinking. They fled the house that night, leaving all their belongings behind. The new owners, they tore down the attic entirely, but the strange noises never stopped. In 2015, a landlord in San Diego rented a one-bedroom apartment to a quiet, middle-aged man named Eric. The apartment had a history of strange complaints, lights flickering, objects disappearing, but Eric didn't seem to mind. That is, until he started hearing someone moving around at night. Eric lived alone, but he often heard heavy footsteps pacing the hall outside his bedroom. Sometimes the door to his closet would creak open on its own. One night, he woke up to find his bedroom door wide open. He distinctly remembered locking it before going to bed. Things escalated when Eric began finding notes on his kitchen counter. They were written in shaky handwriting and said things like, "Leave now," and "This is my home." At first, he thought it was a prank, but the apartment door showed no signs of forced entry. Eric decided to set up a camera in his living room. The next morning, he reviewed the footage. At exactly 3:12 a.m., a dark figure appeared, stepping out of the closet and walking toward the kitchen. The figure had no discernible face, just a black, swirling void where its head should have been. As it walked, it whispered Eric's name. Terrified, Eric called the landlord, who finally confessed. The previous tenant, a recluse named Donna, had died in the apartment years earlier. Her body wasn't found for weeks. Neighbors claimed her spirit never left. Eric moved out immediately, but the landlord continued renting the unit, despite the growing list of tenants who never stayed longer than a month. A young couple, Mia and Lucas, bought their first home in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Oregon. It was a dream come true until the screaming started. The first time they heard it, it was faint, almost like a distant cry carried by the wind. But as the weeks went by, the screams became louder and more frequent. They seemed to come from the walls themselves. Mia, convinced it was an animal trapped in the vents, called pest control, but no nests or creatures were found. One night, Lucas decided to record the sound. He played it back the next day and was horrified to hear words buried beneath the screams. "Get out. Leave now." That night, they heard banging on the walls, as if someone or something was trying to break through. The final straw came when Mia woke up to find handprints on their bedroom ceiling. The prints were too large to belong to either of them and seemed to be made of soot. They called a medium, who told them the house was built on the site of a tragic fire where an entire family had perished. The medium warned them to leave, but it was too late. That very night, the screaming reached an unbearable volume, shaking the walls. As they fled the house, they saw flames in the windows, though no fire ever broke out. They never returned, leaving the house to its restless, vengeful spirits. These are just a few of the countless stories that remind us how thin the veil between our world and the unknown can be. The next time you hear a creak in the floorboards or feel a chill run down your spine, remember, sometimes the house isn't empty. Sometimes something is watching. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to subscribe, and turn on notifications for more terrifying stories from Tales of Terror. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the shadows.